Hey, it's the Heavy Five, and this week we are talking about guitar players. Specifically, the 5 most influential guitar players on heavy music of all time. I want to begin by offering my apologies to Eric Clapton, to Ritchie Blackmore, to Jimmy Page, to Michael Schenker, to Chuck Schuldiner, to Kerry King, to James Hetfield, to anybody that you think should be on the list but is not. These are the 5 people that I think have had the biggest impact across heavy genres. That's metal and punk and sludge and grunge and doom and progressive rock and all the things. So I'm sorry if your favorite guitar player was not included. Some of my favorite guitar players aren't included, but these to me are the 5 guys that changed things forever. I'm going to list these in chronological order, starting with Jimi Hendrix. Of course, Jimi Hendrix changed the electric guitar forever, really beginning with the Jimi Hendrix Experience's debut album, Are You Experienced, from 1967. This influenced hundreds of guitar players. It convinced many aspiring guitar players to put their guitars away. But more importantly, it created all kinds of genres and versions of heavy that would follow in the decades to come. At number 2, it's my man, Tony Iommi. The lead guitar player and chief architect of Black Sabbath, got things started, all things metal and doom and grunge and sludge and all of those things in 1970 with Black Sabbath's eponymous debut record. His famed industrial accident that cut off the tips of his finger changed the way we thought about guitar playing, and specifically the riff as it relates to heavy music. Tony invented all of metal, of course, but also just dozens and dozens of subgenres, as I've talked about numerous times on this channel. At number 3, and this is maybe my most controversial pick, I originally had this as Angus Young, who certainly deserves a nod and is extremely important in the pantheon of hard rock guitar players, but I decided on Ace Frehley. Rest in peace, Ace. We've been talking about you a lot lately, but with Kiss's eponymous debut from 1974, Ace changed guitar playing forever, and not necessarily because of his playing, really because of how many people Kiss and Ace inspired to pick up the guitar and start their own bands across all genres of music, but a massive impact in terms of how many bands ultimately were formed that sound absolutely nothing like Kiss or Ace, but began because somebody had a poster of Ace Frehley on their wall and decided to play guitar. At number 4, it is a praise for the downstroke. It's Johnny Ramone. The Ramones' first album came out in 1976. Arguably started punk rock with Apologies to the Stooges. But Johnny's famed downstroke, his incredibly lightning fast right wrist, really inspired thousands of guitar players in terms of the way they would approach the instrument rhythmically, in terms of the beauty of simplicity. Johnny is a monumental figure across genres you wouldn't even expect. In fact, recently I wrote an article where Kirk Hammett of Metallica was talking about how important Johnny Ramone's downstroke was to the way he plays guitar and ultimately how thrash metal players would approach the instrument. And then at number 5, probably the least surprising name on this list, it is, of course, Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen's debut album came out in 1978, and Eddie, again, like Hendrix, reinvented the instrument. Everybody approached the guitar differently after hearing Eddie Van Halen, and specifically Eruption from Van Halen 1. Eddie also spawned a bunch of bad music. Hair metal is largely, depending on how you feel about hair metal, is largely the offspring of Eddie Van Halen. Lots of wanky instrumental guitar albums came as a result of Eddie's playing, but also a ton of incredible music, as things like technical death metal come to the forefront in recent decades. All of that ultimately comes from Eddie Van Halen. An incredibly melodic player, and you know his sound instantly. So that's my 5. Jimi Hendrix, Tony Iommi, Ace Frehley, Johnny Ramone, and Eddie Van Halen. Sadly, of those 5, only Tony Iommi is left. The other 4 have all passed, sadly. So rest in peace, Jimmy and Ace and Johnny and Eddie. You certainly left a mark on heavy music, on me, and on all of us. Thanks, guys. I will see you next time. Stay heavy.